Hey guys, it's Daniel, licensed therapist. Have you heard of Sonny Liston? He's known for possibly the most iconic sports photograph of all time. Nope, that's not him. There he is, down there. It must be tough having your defining moment as a loss, but believe me, that was not the lowest point of his life. Sonny was a heavyweight boxer who was at one point the champion of the world. But despite this amazing accomplishment, his story is so incredibly tragic. Let's get into it.
Born Charles L. Liston in Arkansas, USA, on an unknown date, Sonny's beginnings were as humble as can be. He was the 24th of 25 children. Growing up on a cotton plantation, his father used him as a substitute for a mule. And when he wasn't being worked by his father, he was being whipped by his father, and he had the scars to prove it.
Sonny came up under probably the poorest kind of financial conditions that you could imagine. Developed his tremendous physique working in the cotton fields as barely a teenager.
Liston said, "We grew up with few clothes, no shoes, little to eat. My father worked me hard and whooped me hard."
I realized what this guy's life was like, beaten every day by his father and had welts on his back the rest of his life.
And the mule dies. And the father, who used to beat the crap out of him anyway, constantly, says, "You're the mule." And he's the mule trotting the furrows in the field. You know, he said, "Dad, I'm not taking this crap anymore."
At the young age of 13, Sonny mustered up the courage to leave his abusive father. All alone, he hitchhiked to St. Louis to reunite with his mother.
I couldn't find too much about his childhood, but there's enough here to infer a whole lot. So here are the facts. He was born into abject poverty, and although slavery had been abolished for 70 years, oh boy, does this childhood look a lot like slavery. He was the 24th of 25 kids. You know, these days you see someone with 3 kids and you ask them if they're going to have another kid, and their eyes get all big and they say, "Are you crazy?" Now imagine having 25 kids. I would be like...
I got Alonzo, who was 5. I have Karis, who was 3. I have my junior, which is 3. I have my daughter, who just turned 3 as of yesterday. I have another son named Tyler. He turns 3 in December. I got another daughter that was born October 16th named London. Another daughter that was born named Leilani, who's 2 years old. And I have my newborn with my wife. Her name is Jersey.
Sheesh! It's safe to say that Sonny didn't get that individual love, care, and attention that young children need. His parents didn't even bother to remember his birthday, for crying out loud. So severe neglect is very probable. And we don't even have to guess about the physical abuse by his father. And this doesn't sound like your run-of-the-mill physical abuse. This sounds like third world stuff, like concentration camp level of physical abuse. Like I said, it sounds like slavery in American South before the Civil War. So what can we psychologically expect from this kind of childhood? I'd be surprised if he saw himself with any type of importance or worth at all. If someone doesn't see themselves with value, then they don't treat themselves with value. So we can expect a lot of poor life decisions, violence, not caring about consequences, substance abuse, unstable relationships or isolation, and ultimately winding up in jail or dead. And although nobody really talks about it, the abandonment of his mom must have also done a lot of damage to him emotionally. And that kind of pain is intense. And maybe under better circumstances, people can overcome that, but I can't find a single positive thing in his childhood. And let's see how this plays out.
As a teenager, Liston had racked up charges of larceny and armed robbery and was known to the police as a Nixie fighter, a man not afraid to fight the cops. Eventually, every police car in St. Louis had a picture of Liston taped to their sun visors. The man had a target on his back.
A serious prison record, armed robbery, assaults on police officers.
Sonny Liston was the most threatening guy around. In 1956, in a brawl with a police officer, the cop wound up with a broken knee, and Sonny managed to run off with the cop's gun and a cap. Then, after his release, he wound up in another fight with a policeman, wound up putting him upside down in a trash barrel.
After he busted the cop's leg in St. Louis, he was a branded man.
The word had gone out, harass this guy, put the screws to him wherever you get the chance.
Sonny Liston, after some minor infractions, went to the big time. He went to rob a gas station, he went to rob a restaurant.
After Sonny was tried, he got 5 years in jail. That was the sentence for armed robbery at the time. And he went to the penitentiary in Jefferson, which was a really tough.
Well, it's playing out just as we suspected. A life of violence and disregarding of any type of consequences. Usually we care what happens to us, so doing something that would land us in jail is typically off the table, but Sonny's out there fighting the cops. It's like he had a desire to throw away his life, and it seems like he was almost happy to go to jail. That part of him that cares for himself and that wanted a good future, it just wasn't developed, which is really sad. And as a therapist, I look at the trajectory of someone's life. If we are on a good trajectory, things don't have to be ideal right now. But as of now, it looks like he's going to be another statistic. Let's see what happens to him in jail.
After Sonny went to prison, a Catholic priest, Father Stevens, talked him into go out for boxing. And then after Sonny won the championship of the prison very easily, Father Stevens was so impressed. First he got Sonny a parole, and then later on he arranged for him to introduce him into professional fighting as he got him some managers.
On the surface, this looks like something that could turn everything around. Finally a break. Something good has happened and someone possibly has made a bond with Sonny. But this always was a long shot. I would suspect that Sonny had some serious trust issues and that it would be incredibly difficult for him to actually connect and attach with another person. And that assumption would appear correct. You don't really hear much about Father Stevens in Sonny's life. Compare this to Mike Tyson's relationship with Cus D'Amato. Cus was able to have such a positive influence over Mike, and I believe saved Mike's life. But Sonny had no such connection with Father Stevens. So once again, Sonny's out there on his own, alone, fending for himself and getting by with what he knows. Unfortunately, it gets worse.
He was a headbreaker. He was feared.
After defeating every man who dared to challenge him, his reputation found its way to some of the Mafia's head honchos, who served as the underworld commissioners of boxing. His potential in the boxing world and mob connections helped get him an early parole, and also on the outside landed Sonny a job as a Mafia leg breaker. Frankie Carbo, a former professional killer for Murder Incorporated, now ruled the boxing game from the shadows and was now the undercover manager of Sonny Liston.
As of December 1960, Sonny Liston was controlled by powerful racketeer groups under the leadership of Frank Carbo, Mr. Gray, the superintendent, one of the most feared gunmen of the Prohibition era, and the undisputed czar of the professional sport.
Have you ever threatened any manager or boxer or promoter for not carrying out any wishes?
I respectfully decline to answer the question on the ground that I cannot be compelled to be a witness against myself.
When he wasn't boxing, Liston's new boss made sure he was available for other work.
Laborers got out of line. Sonny was the guy that roughed them up. He would collect money for loan sharks and numbers riders.
And they involved him to enforce their strikes, their collection of debts, and any other little job that needed to be done.
And they knew this guy could knock out anybody if he hit them, and it was just a question of finding the right front managers. The richest prize in sports is the heavyweight championship, and the mob wanted to get back control of the heavyweight title.
Sonny could have easily started to see boxing as a way out. He was good. He was a monster of a man and was knocking out everyone. If he could have believed in himself and kept out of trouble, he would have just been a legit boxer. But he had no grit or understanding for that. It was not a part of who he was. Like I said, that part never developed. Something that is in most people and something we all take for granted was just not there for Sonny. And there was a tremendous price to pay for his crimes. He was blasted by the media and he was hated by the people for his involvement in organized crime. He was such an amazing fighter, but he was never celebrated in his time like he deserved. And that further cements the worthless identity and view of himself. And this next quote shows him embracing that.
A prize fight is like a cowboy movie, Liston once gloated. There has to be a good guy and a bad guy. People pay their money to see me lose. Only in my cowboy movie, the bad guy always wins.
This shows the narrative in his head. He is the bad guy. His mom abandoned him. His dad beat him. The mobsters used him. The public hated him, even though he was winning. What evidence is there to suggest that he's a good guy? Is there a shred of evidence that would say that he can be the hero instead of the villain? To be honest, at this point, I doubt he would even consider any evidence to be true. So really, what choice does he have but to embrace the identity and narrative of the villain? And so that's what he did.
Sonny Liston, I think, was possibly the greatest intimidator of all time. I've seen him stare guys down where they were so scared climbing up the ring steps they could barely get in the ring.
Looking at people as though he hated everyone. Looking at writers as though he hated all writers.
What made Sonny so intimidating? During my very first internship in graduate school, I had an amazing supervisor named Annie. Annie had a lot of experience with kids in mental health settings. She didn't have a PhD or master's, but the knowledge that she had, to me, was an equivalent. I remember she pointed to a kid once, and she said she can tell that he had been pretty severely abused just by looking at him. I was amazed, and I asked her, how can you tell? She said that people who have been abused have a look. As I progressed as a therapist, and after seeing countless kids who have been abused, I started to see it. Let me tell you, Sonny has that look. It's a detached look where someone barely looks alive inside. When they smile, they don't really look happy. I mean, look at this clip of Sonny winning the heavyweight championship. Look at this guy. He just reached the pinnacle of his profession. All the hard work has paid off. All the training, weight cuts, early morning runs, sacrifice, and pain culminated in this moment. He was the heavyweight champion of this world. This guy can't even crack a smile. To me, this is intimidating because we're looking at a man who just doesn't have feelings. He doesn't care about himself. And we as human beings know that something is wrong. And that is someone who is scary.
Was found dead today in his home in Las Vegas, Nevada.
On January 5th, 1971, after leaving her husband alone in the house over the Christmas holidays, Geraldine Liston returned to find Sonny slumped over, heavily bloated, and in an advanced state of decomposition. With heroin in his system, it was ruled that Sonny died of natural causes. But Liston's fear of needles questioned that ruling and left theories of foul play.
So many people wanted Sonny dead. The only question is who got to him first.
He had gotten involved, muscling in on somebody's loan sharking business, and that he was murdered over this dispute.
Most people in Las Vegas think he was given what they call a hot shot by some element of the mob.
But was it self-inflicted or was it administered by someone else?
Some people saying that he was getting too big for his britches. He was trying to muscle in on some of the underground characters he was working for, and they decided that this was the way to dispose of Sonny.
Sonny's death was shrouded in mystery, but I know what killed him. I could have told you from the beginning. It was the severe abuse and neglect that created that psychological bedrock that sealed the deal. He was supposed to end up in jail or dead. It turns out he did both. While I was hearing his story, I was waiting and hoping for some kind of redeeming person in his life. I was looking for some kind of impetus for change, something that would help him see his value in himself. But unfortunately for Sonny, there was none. And that is the tragedy that is Sonny Liston. And with his story, we can see how psychology can take someone with so much talent and potential and have them not realize that potential. You know, I look at Sonny and I wonder, what if? What if he had met someone that was able to get him to see his value and have him believe in himself? What if his dad was not abusive? What if his mother was just there for him? What if he could have overcome those psychological barriers and lived a psychologically healthy life? Would we be talking about the greatest boxer of all time? I think it's possible. But unfortunately, the deck was stacked against him from the beginning, and the end is what we expected. But one thing that does surprise me is that he was able to become champion. What an amazing accomplishment in spite of everything that was working against him. And for that, I think that anyone that cared for him could be incredibly proud, because still, Sonny Liston defied the odds. Thanks for watching, you amazing person. See you next time.